Hello, everyone. It's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, guys, with me tonight, and let me make sure I'm up first before I plow into this. And perfect cut. With me tonight, I have an amazing guest with me tonight, and I was talking to him just before the show started. Stephen Bassett. Stephen Bassett is here. Stephen Bassett is a UFO researcher and activist for Exopolitics, and I don't want to push too much into this because I want him to explain it himself because I don't want to necessarily screw up his pedigree on this. But Steve, could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. I'm the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, which is not really a research organization. It's a political activist organization. It was named Paradigm Research Group because the first thing I did as an activist in 96 was register as a lobbyist for a number of organizations, a couple of organizations in the field, pro bono. And so Paradigm Research Group. But PRG is a political activist organization, and it has been seeking now for 21 years a simple goal, and that is the simple, it seems, trivial, I mean, simple to explain, but hard to obtain, and that is that to convince the United States government to acknowledge the extraterrestrial presence engaged in the human race and end the truth embargo that's now 71 years in the making. And that event is called disclosure, capital D, and it can only come from the head of state. It can only come from the president, either of this country or another president. That's the goal. It's that simple.
I'm curious, how did you get into this? Before we go further into that part, this is such an interesting field. I'm fascinated by this field. I think it was a few years ago. All at once, it was this thing of, oh my God, I need to learn more about this. It was like all consuming. So it was so bizarre in the way that it was just kind of all at once. What pushed you into this? Because you've been doing this for a while. You've been doing this at the very least since the 90s, or at the very least I know it goes back since
96. Yeah. As you pointed out, it's probably the most compelling issue in the world today. So one doesn't really have to necessarily be pushed into it. The question is whether you want to give your life over to it. And that was an easy decision for me to make. I made it in 1995, late 95. And I'd always been a political activist, I think, at heart. And I dabbled a few times. But my life really didn't take me, my life really never got going. I never really found what I wanted to do. Did various things, but it wasn't going anywhere. This is extremely upsetting for me. Very depressing.
What do you mean? Because it wasn't going anywhere? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's like you're trying to drive somewhere in your car and your wheels are stuck in the mud and they just spin and spin and spin. Yeah. And the more you hit the accelerator, the faster they spin. And so in 95, I sort of reached a critical point where it was either do or die. And I decided I need to do something that means something to me. I need to do something that I want to do. And I thought about it, but not for long. The issue had been with me my whole life. It had always been there, but I'd never engaged it. I read occasionally, always would note the articles that might turn up, but I didn't join any organizations. I didn't do any research. In fact, but I was always a science fiction guy since I was a kid. It was either that or Shakespeare, and Shakespeare's words were never in the right order. So I read science fiction, and it was just all kind of there for me. So in 95, I said, I think this is what I want to do. And I got very lucky. One of the books that most affected me right at that time was John Mack's book on abduction. And him being a Harvard-trained psychiatrist with a Pulitzer Prize was a very powerful statement to me that this issue was maturing. It was getting somewhere that it had never been. And so I thought, okay, this is a good sign. This is a good indication that something major is going to happen. So that could be exciting. And then I made a very good decision. Something that I wish I had learned as a younger man, and which if I ever had any kids, I would certainly teach them very early on. And that is that there's almost nothing you can't get involved with that you might like or what have you, if you're willing to work for free. But if you make your life about where can I get my next paycheck, where can I get paid, chances are you're not going to find or be able to do what you want to do. Some people are fortunate; they can have all of that. So I basically simply volunteered to go work for John Mack in his organization as a volunteer, and I convinced them I'm surprised to this day how I managed. I convinced them without ever meeting me to let me come in and work as a volunteer, and I did. I came in for 4 months.
You worked for John Mack as a volunteer? I did not know that. That is amazing. I've never heard you mention that. That's amazing.
Yeah, in Cambridge, it is Program for Extraordinary Experience Research, PEER.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was an exciting entrance, very invigorating. I got to meet him. I got to talk to contactees for the first time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a fit. That's okay. But it was a great door to go through. And it was while I was in Cambridge, 4 months in, that I was sitting there when it just sort of crystallized for me. I knew I needed to move on. What am I going to do next? And it came to me. One, I knew Washington because I'd lived in and out of Washington for years. So I knew it pretty well. I had family there, so I had a place to stay free, good, which I needed because I was out of money. Not that that's anything new. And I was almost certain that no one had ever registered as a lobbyist on the extraterrestrial issue. And I thought, if I were to do that, if I was to be the first person to ever register as a lobbyist, it would get attention. Because I knew the lobbying registrations were followed closely by the media. They always want to know who's registering for what. So some big shot lobbyist or a firm hires a lobbyist to register for Saudi Arabia or Ukraine or whatever. They want to know that. So those registrations are always checked. And I went down, finally got down there, and I registered. And took about a year before I started getting attention in the Washington Post. Did an interview and put me on the front page of the business section. Very large interview. And I'm off to the races. So it was all right. And there was this idea I had in my head was right on the money. And I never looked back. I knew early on when I was in Boston, if you're, let me put it this way. If you leave San Luis Obispo, which is where I was, which is one of the nicest places in the world to live, it's just incredible. It's near the coast of California, near the ocean. And you head to Boston in January and arrive just after the worst blizzard they had in 30 years. Snow is piled up above the buses. And then you're there for a couple of months and you're not getting paid. And you just feel like this is the greatest thing that ever happened to you. Yeah. That's a good sign that you've made a good choice.
That is awesome.
And I never looked back. 21 years. Had to make a lot of sacrifices, but it didn't matter. I knew I made the right decision. And I'm just very fortunate I had that chance, because a lot of people when they hit my age, then 95, maybe they go work for the Peace Corps for a couple of years or they take up painting, but they don't get involved in anything profound. Usually it's a little too late.
That is amazing.
Second chances.
That is amazing. I am blown away by that. And man, this is taking my head in a whole different direction. I did not know you were going to say that. I did not know you were working with John Mack. That's amazing.
Yeah, I worked for his organization and met him. I wasn't like his assistant or anything, but I got exposed to PEER, got exposed to Mack's efforts. It was very invigorating.
Let me ask you this. Part of the reason why I say pushed in the direction, I know for I'll say us, but I know for people who are interested in the subject, it doesn't feel like you need to be pushed because it just seems the most natural thing in the world. It's like we're a ball hurling through space. And as a ball hurling through space, in the same way that we go to our celestial neighbors, it's very possible that somebody else may come here. It's just, it's always weird to me.
It's certain.
People don't think that way. Yeah, it's always bizarre to me. That's why I say pushed. Why do you think there's this kind of hurdle for this? I find this to be one of the most bizarre hurdles in the world, where people are always freaked out when you bring up the conversation, or people don't necessarily know how to take the conversation. What's that bar? What's that thing where they have a hard time getting their head over in order to deal with the subject?
Well, the bar that you're referring to has been lowered every year, particularly in the last 20 years. It's pretty low now. There's very little what I would call peer pressure or peer blowback when you bring it up, when you talk about it. It certainly wasn't that way 60 years ago. It wasn't that way 40 years ago. But so I got lucky. I got in 96, and the bar was already coming down. And I've never really experienced much of that. But I'm fully aware of the truth embargo. The bar was set by the government, and they began to create the truth embargo and the barrier to this issue in the early 1950s.
Just so we're clear, could you explain that to my audience? I know what that is, but I don't know if everyone else knows what that is. Like the truth embargo and what you mean by exopolitics. I don't know.
Well, the truth embargo is the phrase that I'm going to take credit for.
You should. That's where I heard it.
Well, first of all, UFO is something I want. If I could obliterate it from the lexicon, right, and make it completely go away, I would. It's no longer useful. In fact, it's nothing but negative. But for most of the 20th century, the second half of the 20th century, it was called the UFO cover-up. Well, it's not about UFOs. It's about extraterrestrials, and it's not a cover-up. It was a policy, a national security policy, and it was legal. So I changed it to truth embargo, like we embargoed Cuba. That was legal, right? But you couldn't go there. So the government was faced with an extraordinary dilemma starting in 47 and really manifesting in 52 when we had a huge flyby over several days in the Capitol. ET craft were flying over the Capitol, scared the hell out of the government. How can they contain this issue? In other words, you can't make it secret because it's flying around whenever it wants to, right? But how can you contain it? How can you prevent the citizens and institutions of a relatively free democratic republic from engaging this issue, funding it, doing research, and just putting a whole lot of pressure on the government to come up with something? How do you do that? It was not easy. But they had the benefit of new technologies. They had the benefit of the rapidly growing intelligence agencies and everything that were being formed to, quote, counteract the Soviet Union. And so they were able to piggyback the truth embargo on the expansion of the national security state structures designed to save us from the awful Soviets. Fine. And they put huge amounts of money into it. The idea was ridicule the subject, ridicule the people in it, lie, deny, whatever you have to do, misinform, pollute the information pool, harass, intimidate, whatever, but not shoot people, not haul people off to gulags, right? You couldn't do that. And so it was a huge, basically public is what do I call it? It was a propaganda campaign is what it was, but it was more than just propaganda. It was literally manipulating the perception of an entire nation so that they would stay behind a line. They would stay behind a line that they wouldn't cross. You could go up to it, but you don't go across it. And they succeeded. It's one of the most successful attempts of that ever. I mean, there are plenty of nations that do this. North Korea, for instance, completely indoctrinates its citizens from the day they're born. And they're completely, I guess you could say, encapsulated throughout their life. But that's been going on a long time. They have huge amounts of control. They're virtually going through several generations. And so it's not that hard. You're born into a control state. There's no outside input. It's very rigorous. It's totalitarian. And so, yeah, they literally control the worldview of their people and to an enormous degree. That's not nearly as difficult as what the U.S. military intelligence community had to do, starting in 1947 to 53 and forward. And they managed to pull it off, but it's now coming to an end. That whole 71-year period, this truth embargo, just like the Cuba embargo, is coming to an end now.
Falling apart. Let me ask you this: do you think they had good reason for this? And let me explain. And this is a weird question, and I know it's somewhat of a weird question. I started this with this kind of this somewhat of a character arc on this. My first initial thought was they need to reveal it, tell everything. I want to know all. Whisper in my ear, tell me everything. I want to know it all. I don't care what it is. Explain it. Come out to the American public and tell the American public and just the world what's taking place. And then somewhere along the way, when I became more politically astute, I started realizing, oh my God, people are maniacs. And people being maniacs, I had to think from the standpoint of, I'm okay with this information. I'm pretty sure this guy will be okay with this information, but how does the rest of the world take this? You have people who are ensconced in their religious beliefs or ensconced in this kind of capitalistic thing. All of these mindsets, and you're, bringing this other thing into this from somewhere else, from across our shores. Do you think that that was the reasoning for it, and do you think that reasoning for it was just? And I know you're biased on this. I'm biased on this
The
too.
reasoning, well, the reasoning that the government had is known only to the government. We can't. We can only infer from certain actions what their reasoning might be. I think we have a pretty good idea. There were the principal reason for the truth embargo was the Cold War and the Soviet threat, without question. In fact, that's the reason for a lot of things. Right. And this is, I think, pretty well established now. They were faced, once Roswell took place, of course, the sightings are coming in. Then you have the flyby over Washington, July 1952. They were faced with a situation where they knew the moment the moment the Roswell records was obtained and the dead bodies were obtained, and one living body, we're pretty sure, there was no doubt after that, whatever doubt they might have had prior to that, though there's also a possibility they had a crash vehicle in Cape Girardeau earlier. But when something like that turns up, doubt. So they know there's ETs. They know they're from elsewhere, and they know they have technology in their hands. At the same time, they're now learning that the Russians are going to test their atom bomb, their hydrogen bomb, and of course the missile technologies, which were enabled by their German scientists, just as ours were. It's like the Nazi legacy lived on and still around.
Operation Paperclip,
right? And they knew in their minds, these are very highly skilled, highly intelligent people, mostly men, that had just won World War II. And they were not, there was not a lot of, let's just say these are serious people. And they, I'm sure, believed and were convinced that another war was very likely. And it would be because one war always gives you the next one, right? And it would be nuclear. And so they're thinking the next war is going to happen and it's nuclear. And then how can we win it, or how can we prevent it? Whatever. They were dealing with existential reality at a global level. And now they got ETs, right? What the hell do we do about that? All right. And their decision was, we can't muddy this situation. We can't make this situation any more complicated than it already is. And besides, if this thing were a known and fully accepted reality, then all of the distrust and paranoia that was building up between the Soviet Union and the United States would include what we'll call the ET distrust and paranoia. Are you dealing with them? Are you dealing with ones we don't know? Have you got tech from their craft we don't have? Is there an ET technology race going on in your underground facility? Whatever the hell. And so they had to contain it. Now, whether or not the American intelligence operations were communicating with the Soviet intelligence, meaning, okay, we sort of know about these ETs, you probably know about these ETs, that's kind of, a little something going on here. We don't want to have a war accidentally because you mistake some, anti-gravitic propulsion saucer for a missile and blow this all up. What? We don't know, because that's part of the truth embargo. And so that was their decision. And I will not argue with that decision. I would not want to have been there. Now, in retrospect, I can make a very good case that if they had simply let the Roswell initial press release stand, let the reporters get to Roswell, start interviewing everybody all over town, and the whole thing had come out in 47, I have a feeling we'd be far better off now than by keeping it cheap. But that's a 2020 hindsight thing.
Yeah, that's
worth
fair.
a book. Could have a lot of fun with that, but I don't want to make that decision. So they didn't know in 1953 that, one, we weren't going to have a nuclear war. We were going to have a Cold War, and they could not have known it would last 44 years. I just don't think they could have imagined that. Yeah. In other words, if it is going to become a hot war, or we'll get rapprochement. So 44 years go by, and each year that passes, more and more nukes are turning up, and then more and more nations getting nukes. And so you got 8 nations and around 86,000 nukes by the mid-1980s. And so if you're in the national security state and you want to raise your hand and say, look, I know about the 80,000 nukes, and I know there's 8 countries, and there's a lot of instability in the world, but I think it's time for the people to know about the ETs. The answer would be, shut the you-know-what up. So by 1991, by the time the Cold War ends, the truth embargo is now fully institutionalized. It's in our DNA. It's just been accepted. That line is now a fixed line in our reality. If you're in the media, you don't cross it. If you're in the military, you don't cross it. If you're an academic, you don't cross it. You stay behind it, and if you do, all cool. But if you cross the line, there's going to be problems, right? It literally sprang organically from the truth embargo, meaning all the ridicule that had been going on for decades, all the denial and everything else. So somebody crosses that line and goes, you know, I think ET's real. Suddenly people look at him like, what are you talking about?
That guy's crazy. Yeah.
And that in a few words describes something that a few thousand books will be written about. And what changed it and made possible for what I do is we actually ended the Cold War, though we're trying to start a new one, but you know, that's just what we do. And once the Cold War ends, the principal barrier to maintaining that embargo goes away. It's like if Cuba had suddenly, you know, Castro had stepped down and Cuba had embraced democratic values in 1983 or 95, people would have gone, hey, let's get to Cuba. But they hung on, right? And so, but finally, okay, we did it. But the Cold War was very definitive. And ever since that Cold War ended in 91, there's just been one series of events and things happening that have been pushing that embargo down, lowering that bar. And now it's so low, we're about to jump over it.
I'm curious, do you think that they've been putting this information out intentionally in order to kind of seed the public, to kind of bring the public around to, or do you think, let me ask you this, do you think it's a porous embargo, or do you think the embargo was absolute? Meaning, I've heard the hypothesis that they were seeding the public with information in order to get the public to kind of come around to this idea without shocking or scaring the hell out of the public at once. Or it's just a hard embargo?
It was never that much about the public being scared. And that was always an excuse that they used to justify it to insiders and so forth.
I see.
In other words, we can't scare, you know, the American people went through World War II. All right. And what we went through in World War II was nothing compared to what other parts of the world went through in World War II.
Yeah.
The Japanese had nuclear bombs dropped on them. The Soviets lost 20 million people. So the idea that the human race, after going through that, is going to simply go nuts if they learn there's extraterrestrials here, flying around in our skies, was always bogus. But it was an excellent mean to generate and help persuade people from just, you know, don't cross the line. But to get to your question, the truth embargo was always porous because the ETs do whatever the hell they want, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it, right? I mean, the Pentagon could have some really fantastic plan about how they're going to maintain the truth embargo, and the ETs could put up a neon sign over the Pentagon saying, "We're here."
Yeah, we're here, landing on the White House lawn.
So it was always porous. That's why it was such an extraordinary accomplishment. And
that's a good point.
But there's no question. I'm pretty convinced that since '91, there has been a certain amount of stuff coming out of government that is designed to be what is now referred to as soft disclosure. I call small d disclosure. In other words, there are people within the military intelligence community, which is huge, by the way, and it's not monolithic, that are probably absolutely adamant that there should never be disclosure. We shouldn't reveal anything. Nobody should know anything. There's some other groups that are softer than that, and there's some other groups that I think probably strongly favor getting disclosure done. Mm-hmm. And so out of that amalgam comes, I think, some efforts to bring some information out to inoculate and to acclimate the people towards the inevitable.
Yeah.
It also makes the government look good, because if you're not doing something, if you're not showing some of your cards, it makes you look more and more ridiculous. In other words, here's one lie that's far. Let's say you're married. I'm not married. Let's say you are.
I'm married. Yeah.
There is a lie worse from keeping from your wife, for instance. And that's the lie where she already knows the truth and doesn't tell you, and you just keep thinking that lie's hanging in there for you. And each day, month, year that goes by, her wrath grows, right? And that's the kind of lie the truth embargo is. They tell us it's not true, and we know damn well it is true. They don't really care that we know damn well it is true. The whole thing is just bizarre. And so the distrust grows.
Yeah.
That's the kind of lie it is now. And that's a problem for them. And to some degree, they're trying to mitigate it by showing themselves to be, to some degree, part of the solution and not the problem.
It's wild to me. I mean, like I said, it's always bizarre to me that that's one of those things that people are always, that they don't necessarily talk about more. I was always shocked by it. Let's talk Tom DeLonge for the moment. Sure. So for those who don't know, Tom DeLonge comes out with To the Stars Academy. It's like the science, technology, and arts for-profit company, or public ownership company, that seeks to not only put out artwork and information out in regards to the UFO subject, or UOPS, I don't know what they call it now, but to also technology, meaning to replicate the technology that they're seeing, the phenomena. What do you think about Tom DeLonge? Do you, and I'm asking this in a broad way because I want to give you some latitude in the way that you answer this. I don't know him. I've seen interviews with him on Joe Rogan and some other places. I don't know the read to get on him. And that's why I'm asking this question in this way. I've heard there's been a lot of UFO people who've been going after Tom DeLonge, and I don't necessarily understand why they've been after him to such a degree. Like, essentially saying some of the stuff was a hoax and everything else, despite having the Pentagon paper, the information direct link to the Pentagon, despite having the people there to talk to. Some people were still going after him on this. What is with the UFO community and Tom DeLonge? I just thought it was so odd that they went after him for some of the stuff. And it's some people one guy went after him saying that the video that he was showing was a hoax. And I was making a point. It was like, you're telling me that the military person who's on the Nimitz is lying? You're telling me that the pilot is lying? It's like, what do these people have to lie about this particular thing in this case, put their careers and everything else on the line? So I'm curious. That question is two parts. A, what is your perspective or impression of Tom DeLonge? And B, does the UFO community have an issue with Tom DeLonge? And if so, what?
First of all, what is happening here is very complicated and very important. It's been about 2.5 years in the development. It's not trivial. And I'm doing my best to get a perspective on it. We're talking on March the 1st. I'll actually be talking about DeLonge on Coast to Coast AM tonight.
Nice.
I'm going to be doing on Monday, which I think today's Friday, Saturday. On Monday the 3rd, is that the 3rd? Yeah. I'm going to be doing a substantial interview on MUFON TV, MUFON.tv. It's MUFON's television network now. Again, talking about it. On my new website, I say it's new, my fully remodeled Paradigm Research Group website, which is now 21st century site, thank God, after 27 years. I'm going to be putting up material about that. I've already got things up, so a lot more coming. This is a big deal. Okay, that's the first thing. Second, it's not about Tom DeLonge. I mean, he is clearly he is clearly somebody that's helped initiate this, but it's way bigger than Tom. And the focus needs to be more on the total picture than on him personally. He is the spokesperson for the organization he created, but others are going to be the spokesperson for the issue, with the lead person right now being Luis Elizondo. So that's second point. Third point. What we're seeing here is information coming out of the government itself in a more overt way.
Yeah.
And as I've said many times in previous interviews, as we get closer to disclosure, the amount of scrutiny of people worldwide on this subject is just going to magnify. It's going to exponentially increase in a way that was virtually unthinkable in 1975 or 1985. You've got 3 billion people with computers right now, might even be higher. And I forget how many are on the net, but it's a big number, maybe 2 billion, maybe more. And so as we get closer to disclosure, the scrutiny is going to grow. And then with disclosure, the scrutiny is going to go off the charts. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that this is the most important issue in the world today. The implications are staggering. And so as it finally manifests, every word that the government says, everything that comes out of the government is going to be analyzed down to the syllable, the molecule. Everything is going to be scrutinized. And there's going to be plenty of efforts to debunk everything that the government says, which is one of the reasons why I've said many times, everybody's worried about a false flag or this massive manipulation where they give us a load of baloney in order to do $1 trillion increase in defense spending, and basically just lie like hell. I don't think so. But they've gotten away with plenty of lies, but this is not then. This is now. And the scrutiny level, I mean, you're going to have a couple of 100 million people out there with computers able to analyze, look at, refer to, communicate with each other. You've got insiders that could come out and say, wait a minute, that's not true. So if they try to lie, it'll blow up in the government's face, and I think they know that. So we're going to get the truth. The closer we get to disclosure and after disclosure, we're pretty much going to get the truth, and any attempt to get otherwise will be a big mistake. Point number 3. Point number 4. As people, if someone were to go to the Stars Academy of Art and Science website and review their team, their mission statement, and look at the video where they announced the To the Stars Academy on October the 11th,
yeah,
and anything else they want to read about it, there's a couple things they need to keep in mind. One, they talk about the fact they want to raise money and explore a whole bunch of areas. They want to look into anti-gravitic propulsion and new technologies and so forth, all of which are on the table because these things have been discussed in the context of this issue in the US government for decades, right? And everybody's kind of knows there's something going on. Okay, fine. And they very wisely created a public benefit corporation to raise some money to pursue these things and get people involved, which is good. You can't do stuff without money. And so whatever they want to do, they need money. And they've already raised $2.5 million. Wonderful. But what people need to understand is this. This is not quite what it seems. It can't be what it seems. And what do I mean? The US government, well, and by the way, one of the other things they did is they released the first ever gun camera footage from a UAP intercept. And with the pilot, the whole 9 yards, and everybody, huge article in the New York Times and so forth.
Post, yeah.
And then they revealed in an article in the New York Times that a study was put together under the auspice of Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, and Luis Elizondo ran it, and Bigelow helped with that and did some of the research and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's excited. Oh, they were studying UFO. Okay, here's the reality behind this maneuver. All right, 1. The US government has been studying extraterrestrial phenomena, crash vehicles, and biological entities every day, 365 a year since 1947, and never stopped, and poured billions of dollars into it, right? So the fact that a study was put together by Harry Reid, and they put that program out there, that, oh, they hadn't been studying it, but now they are for 5 or whatever years, ridiculous. That was a study they had to put together because Harry Reid wanted it, and they had to keep him happy. Yeah. They have never stopped studying it. They have studied it. You can't imagine. Number 2, I don't know how much money To the Stars Academy will raise, but the projects they're talking about, actually maybe trying to get into, are all multi-billion-dollar projects.
I was thinking the same.
To raise that kind of money.
You're talking about electrogravitic devices, like literally. I saw I'm sorry to interrupt. The video that you're talking about, where they gave their announcement, and I think they had like Hal Rudolph, Elizondo on stage, and they showed a picture of the craft that they wanted to build, and they were like, "We raised $2 million," and I was like, "You're going to need a hell of a lot more than $2 million to build that craft, buddy."
But it doesn't matter. You want to know why? The government's already engineered that craft. Yeah, the government has anti-gravitic propulsion. The government has made, I believe, though it's a little harder to confirm, I'm sure, extraordinary progress in dealing with the ET energy systems. So that's already there. And so what? They're going to somehow raise $50 billion and do what the government's already done? Maybe 40? I don't think so. So that's something else we need to understand. Then another thing. It was a big deal when that first gun camera footage was released. I've been talking about gun camera footage for 20 years. Everybody's excited about it. People need to understand. The government has stacks and stacks and stacks of gun camera footage from intercepts going back to all the way to the 1940s. Not only that, the UK has got them. Soviet Union's, Russia's got them. China's got them. France has got them. UK has got them. Every single developed country that has an air force that actually sends planes up to intercept unidentified bogeys that cross into their territory has got gun camera footage. Why? Because you don't send up a military defense plane to intercept a bogey that you don't know what it is. It could be a military plane from another country. It could be a lost airliner. Could be, and don't film it, and then have the pilot fly back and say, "Okay, can you draw us a picture of what you saw?" I don't think so. And none of that has ever been released, because to release the gun camera footage from these intercepts would blow the truth embargo out of the water overnight. Maybe not one, but 30 or 40 would do the trick. And so again, you see, this is kind of a game, isn't it? It's not exactly what it seems. Here's a piece of gun camera footage, get excited, but they don't say, and by the way, there's 10,000 more of these in the government files, but you can't get them, because that would be violating a national security thing. And so again, what is going on here? Well, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, and Tom DeLonge has made this very clear. If you go back and listen in particular, and you need to listen to it several times because it's very drawn out. But Tom DeLonge gave the initial opening maneuver in an interview to George Knapp on March the 27th of 2016 on Coast to Coast AM. It was the full 4 hours. The last half was questions. So the last, rather, half of one segment was questions. And if you listen to it, and you listen to it enough that you start to put the pieces together, because it's very rambling, what you will discover is, one, that he was able to connect with insiders because he was trying to, and at some point they decided, fine, you can, right? So exactly who reached out to who is not clear, but it was kind of a mutual coming together. But he had the money to fly around and go places and do things that almost none of the other researchers or activists in this field can do. Yeah. And he had a name and whatever, and so he penetrated and things together. And what emerges, one of the things that emerged from this, one of the things that's going on here, is that Tom DeLonge is running a public relations program for the CIA and the Pentagon.
Yes.
And I am not offended by that. It's exactly what I would do if I was the Pentagon and I was the CIA. Why? Why would you need a public relations program? Here's the reason. They calculated that disclosures days, the truth embargoes days were numbered. And that's a somewhat more complex story I might be able to touch on depending upon our time. And they knew that obviously not only has the ET issue been pulled out from under the White House and the Congress for a long time, meaning they're not briefed anymore. It's all black, all right? So that kind of means they own it, doesn't it? It's not like the president is sending them emails every couple of months saying, keep the embargo going, guys. The president doesn't even know what the hell they're doing. And the Congress knows even less, which is one of the reasons why trust in Congress is collapsed to extraordinary issues. People think they're ineffective, partially because they've been made ineffective. And so they're sitting there holding on to this thing and knowing that it may not be long before a head of state, possibly not an American president, is going to tell the world there's an extraterrestrial president. And we know what happens the day after that? 10,000 reporters are going to be camped out on their parking lots, right, at Langley and in Virginia at the Pentagon with 10,000 questions about why, what, when, why didn't you? Why did you keep this, alive, blah, blah, blah. And so they're going to take massive heat. And they don't want that because they see themselves as the good guys. And I think basically they are. It was a national security decision. And so what do you do You need to get a public relations program going. You need to do something that shows the world's people that you are trying to be part of the solution and not the problem. Now, admittedly, that doesn't mean you're going to be absolved of the entire truth embargo and everything you might have done, but nevertheless, it's, what happens last counts. And Tom DeLonge has been chosen to sort of carry this out by being the spokesperson for this PR program, which includes a lot of heavy-duty insiders, which they need in order to back up the gravitas of it all. And so he is trying to make the Pentagon and the CIA look better. I'm happy he's doing that, because we don't need disclosure should not be followed by an endless battle of it's an endless criticisms and angry and lawsuits and everything else. We need to move on. So that's one thing that's going on. The second thing is this, and I've said this many times. Disclosure is the most profound event in human history. It's the biggest paradigm change in human history. And whenever you have change, you have opportunity. And when you have paradigm change, you have buku opportunity. And so not so much at this time, well, not so much in the previous years, where getting into this field like I did means basically a life of penury. Yeah. And you're not going to have any money. You're not going to get a job. In fact, get rid of your family and your wife. You're not going to be able to have that either. The closer we get disclosure, the opportunity is going to escalate, right? And after disclosure, it's going to go off the charts. What do I mean? I mean that huge sums of money are going to be made. Vast sums of money are going to be made by people who are addressing this paradigm change as it's about to manifest and after it happens. Massive corporations are going to move in. They're going to set up structures and programs. Research programs emerge out of nothing. And the big money, of course, is going to get the most of it. But a lot of other organizations, not so big, are going to be able to participate. There is massive opportunity. And so, whether you're Elon Musk building chemical rockets that are basically obsolete, or whether you're Milner, the Russian Yuri Milner, putting huge money into SETI, searching for signals that's pointless.
Yeah, that was always weird to me too.
Or Bezos, or Branson. It's all kind of nuts in a way, because these people are billionaires. They know what's going on. If you're a billionaire, there are people lining up at your office to tell you stuff. And the idea that I'm a billionaire and I'm involved in tech and I'm not aware that there's an ET presence. Hell, all you can do is read Stan Friedman's books and a few others, and you know that. They already know, but yet they're doing this. Why? Why? Chemical rockets? Because they're in the game. They're in the space game. Bigelow's in the space game. Branson's in the space game. And the To the Stars Academy wants to get in all the games. So when disclosure happens and we start to get the real truth, admittedly, the government stuff is much cooler, but they're in the front line to participate in what comes next. In other words, who is going to benefit? Who is going to be the first to get involved in the antigravitic technology that may be available to us post-disclosure, and the energy systems and everything else? Well, if you're already in a game, you got a heads up. And what's to be made post-disclosure? Think whatever Musk thinks he's going to make in his SpaceX program and his wonderful PR, like sending a car into space. Yeah. Coolest thing I've ever seen done. Okay, it's the coolest meme ever done. Multiply that by 1,000 or 10,000, and you'll get an idea of what he can make post-disclosure. And so this is positioning, and the Catholic Church is doing it. Yeah. Institutions are doing it. They are positioning for the big event. Some of them are going to be able to take advantage a little earlier. The Catholic Church is not out there trying to get people to donate to it because of its fairly progressive view on the ET issue. Yeah. But Tom DeLonge is. They just raised $2.5 million. They're about to go to the second level. And as things keep unfolding, there's a new New York Times article come out, they'll raise more money. They'll get up to 5, 8, 10, 15, 20, 30 million, enough to be able to maneuver. Yeah. Build an antigravitic spaceship? I don't think so. But connect with the government on their antigravitic spaceships? Why not? Okay? The people that don't have any of that, what are they going to say? Oh, wow, we want to be part of the game. What have you done? Well, nothing really. You get my point?
I get your point. I get your point. But what you're making me realize though, is that the reason why people somewhat distrust him on this? Like because they feel like he's a mouthpiece, that they feel like he's affiliated with these kind of military types. It's I guess I look at it as, and not just me, and I don't look at Tom DeLonge anyway because I don't necessarily know. I don't know enough about him. It's one of those things of, oh, that's cool that he's releasing this and he's getting information out, and it's cool that he's being a conduit. I guess I don't. I always look at it as from the whole world. I mean, to a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. And if you're working with these guys who are in the CIA, the Pentagon, and everything else, I'm wondering, is that why the community is somewhat distrustful of him on this? They look at it and they say, look, these guys, because I would imagine a lot of ufologists believe that the government puts out disinformation, or if it puts out information in a way to hit them in the knees, where you can discredit, part of it's true, the other part of it's false, that type of stuff. So is it they're somewhat distrustful of him because of the government's history? And then you combine that with he has these contacts within that same government that they're somewhat distrustful of in the way that the government has gone about its affairs on the UFO topic.
The answer is yes. Look, if somebody's been, well, one of the tragedy of institutional lying, which is one of the things plaguing the American government right now.
Yeah.
The tragedy of institutional lying, particularly when it goes on for decades, is that the truth finally shows up, you don't recognize it.
Yeah, you don't believe it.
Tragedy, isn't it? And so, given the record here, I don't blame anybody for distrusting anything the government does now. And so, if they release some gun camera footage, it could be this, it could be that. So the reflex reaction is don't trust it. In fact, go after it if you can, debunk it if you can. Don't trust anybody that's a spokesperson. And obviously, he's raised some money, and that's a really terrible thing. Well, that's something that really irritates me, but I don't blame them. However, look, it's one thing to reflex response. It's another thing to look at it, to study it, to try to understand what's going on. So I invite people to go to the Stars Academy website, read everything there, read the background on all the people, go watch their interviews. There's been a couple of dozen already where they're being interviewed. Elizondo's been interviewed several times. Leslie Kane, one of the authors, Blumenthal, all of them. Read the interviews, listen to what they're saying, right? Listen to Tom DeLonge's, earlier interviews, and try to get the sense of it all, right? Try to get the full picture of this, and then say to yourself, is this more disinfo? Is this a scam, right? Well, I have looked at the big picture, and I can say with high confidence that what's going on now is unprecedented. Yeah. Nothing like this has ever happened before. In other words, the truth is starting to arrive, and it's not going to be easy, but people need to sort of shed their well-developed perceptions and biases and try to take it at face value. It doesn't mean they just roll over, but more is coming, and I feel relatively comfortable that this is what it is.
Yeah.
Now, there are some things about it which trouble me a little bit, but not much.
What are the things that trouble you about it? I mean, I listened to the palette, and I listened to Hal Puthoff's explanation of this was awesome. I mean, I remember Hal Puthoff going all the way back to Ingalls Swan, and Hal Puthoff was explaining some of the behavior of the craft itself in regards to the energy propulsion and everything else. I don't get the feel that Hal Puthoff is lying or Alexandro is lying. They came across as being credible to me. Not to mention it has you could see where the information came from. So I was more inclined to believe what was being said. It wasn't. I guess I'm playing devil's advocate on this slightly, even though I actually believe the information that's being put out.
One of the most important things that I can say about the entire To the Stars Academy effort and Tom DeLonge's run up to that effort, but particularly since the announcement on October 11th last year, which is a date that may go down in history, is this: if you listen to everything they're saying and doing, it's very clear that one, they are not violating any non-disclosure agreements or national security oaths. Yeah. Right? They're not releasing any classified material illegally. They're avoiding certain language. They don't like this. They will say UFO. They don't say extraterrestrial. They avoid the term phenomena. They try to keep it in the basis of clearly an extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
But literally, when you look at Chris Mellon's statement when he at the announcement event on October the 11th, and when he does the Nimitz chronology, he does everything but say it's an extraterrestrial craft. But they don't go that far. In other words, they are not breaking the law. They are operating within the rules, which is exactly what you would expect the Pentagon and the CIA to expect of a group of people, some recently retired, they're going to sign up to do this program, all right, and cooperate with. And so, and I expect them to stay within those lines for the indefinite future. There is a limit to that, though, because I don't know if the Pentagon and the CIA are underestimating us, but the amount of knowledge that we have, collective knowledge on this subject, in the hands of not only just regular people, but also the researchers and activists, is large. Okay. Yeah. And the idea that we're sitting here going, oh, okay, I understand. It may not be extraterrestrial, but it could be just something extraordinary. No. All right. Yeah. So it's a bit of a game, but that game can't last indefinitely, and it will break. So that's something. And so that's exactly what I would expect. These aren't whistleblowers, right? They're not rogues. Yeah. This is a program that was set up by people inside, some of which had to step back when the WikiLeaks thing blew the thing wide open, when they released the Podesta emails, had to step back, but then others were able to come forward. This is a project that is designed to stay within the rules, educate the public, make the military intelligence complex look better, and to some degree advance the disclosure process, because they kind of know that it's not going to last much longer. Now, there are some geopolitical considerations here. Again, the complexity of the total picture is huge. But the other thing I would add is this: at the pace things are happening, meaning if the next New York Times article, which is slated at any time, there's going to be another footage release at any time. Yeah. And Bigelow, they're starting to close in on Bigelow, trying to get to him, trying to find out about that material that he has, which is not that big. Material is not that big a deal, but it's fascinating. If they keep dropping these things into the mix about every 45 days, the truth embargo cannot sustain it. The only reason the media didn't go completely boom when those two New York Times articles came out, and a lot of people don't understand. Some people don't understand. Again, if they bought the whole fake news crap that's going on right now, the New York Times is just a propaganda operation. I'm sorry, I'm sorry for
gravity. Yeah,
but I don't recall ever seeing. Well, it's probably happened, but it's incredibly rare, where not one, not two, but three people get their byline on two New York Times articles in the same day.
Washington Post, Politico, yeah, MSNBC, CNN, all of them.
I've already found 200 articles. I've got 200 articles linked on my website right now to this story. Right, yeah. You can go to my website and find the media archive, and you can find them all 200 of them. So the other thing that people need to know is that the New York Times did not send out a couple of Woodwards and Bernstein to run this story down. It was handed to them on a silver platter by To the Stars Academy, all right, which had been alluding to it already. And that's fine. That happens all the time. So the New York Times decision was, is this news? Obviously, they thought so because they ran two stories. But they did more than that. They assigned a regular reporter, Helene Cooper, but then they got Leslie Kane in on it, who may have been the person that brought the story in because she's written on the subject. She's known to be connected to it, but she has a fairly high profile as mainstream.
Right.
And then the cherry on the ice cream sundae, they brought in Ralph Blumenthal. Why? He has a Pulitzer Prize, and he's been nominated for another Pulitzer Prize, and he's very much interested in the subject. And so that gave the story gravitas. The New York Times went out of their way to make sure these stories, boom, hit hard, had plenty of gravitas. And I assure you they didn't do that because, well, we're done with that now.
Right.
They know they have Watergate times 1,000 sitting in their Pulitzer Prize list right now, and they're going to run with it. The only reason it didn't blow even more quickly is that this is all happening within the most extraordinary period of political chaos in America. Yeah. A 5-ring circus, clown cars everywhere, and they're barely keeping up with it. Every other day, there's another bizarre story, and that has prevented it from going. It's okay, no problem. The To the Stars Academy is not going anywhere. There's more stuff coming up. At this pace, I don't see the truth embargo making it through 2018, and I am planning for that.
Let me ask you this. Tom DeLonge, I remember seeing one of the interviews where he, and this gets into some of the other stuff with John Mack, and even with Stephen Greer. Why? I always thought it was odd that both people have contacts. Like, there would be certain people who are in this field that would have certain internal contacts, either military, either some kind of corporations or something to that effect. You may have some people who worked in aspects of NASA. People will come on front of the camera and say, I did this, or military personnel. They have two drastically different views of this, the paradigm associated with this. Like, so one goes to the extreme saying, you know, they're everybody is peace and love and everybody is space brother and there are no, you know, bad aliens. Yeah. And Tom DeLonge takes, if I am not mistaken, this kind of opposite approach of there are some rough things that the public needs to swallow. If both of these guys have contacts, is it, how can I say this? I guess what I'm asking is, it seems that they're leaving them to their devices in regards to what they already believe. Like, so if the person believes that there are no bad aliens, they just let them go with that particular belief that there are no bad aliens. If the other guy believes that they are, they just let them go with that particular belief that they are. It doesn't seem like they're, I didn't get the feeling from listening to Tom DeLonge that Tom DeLonge, either had any kind of experience himself directly, but it also felt like what Tom DeLonge knew, it was just kind of emboldened. It wasn't necessarily changed based on what they told him, if that makes sense. And it's by the Joe Rogan interview where he was like, I know things. They were shocked at the stuff that I knew. And it's like, but why do you believe you know things? And he wasn't a contactee. He wasn't any of these things. For all intents and purposes, he knows what he's read and I guess the people he interacted with.
Tom DeLonge's been studying the field for a long time. He's read hundreds of books. He's an autodidact.
Yeah.
Right. So he has absorbed a good deal of the material that's in the public domain. Right, thousands of books. Now, the problem with that is that probably more than half of all of that material is wrong.
That's what I'm getting at. It's like, how do you know what's true and what's not in that particular category, particularly when you have Greer, who also has contacts, saying the opposite, and Tom DeLonge is saying, and look, I'm not saying DeLonge is wrong on this. In fact, I'm not saying either one is right or either one is wrong. I guess I'm showing this comparison of how they're coming at this from two drastically different points of view. Yeah.
This is the number one exopolitical question, and there are a bunch of exopolitical questions, I assure you, but at the top of the list, probably the most important is, good ETs or bad ETs? That's a pretty important question that needs to be answered. I'm pretty sure the answer is way more complicated than good or bad.
Yeah, me too. I don't think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We know, you mentioned some of the researchers who feel very strongly that the ET collective, the whole thing, is very positive, very good, don't worry. Tom has spoken to the other side of this somewhat. The most problematic thing that he has said, one can find, if they go to Coast AM for the archives. I haven't found it on YouTube yet. It may be there. And they go to the March 27, 2016 show with George Knapp.
Yeah.
The 4-hour that I toured to. Man, you have to subscribe. It's $3 a month. I encourage people to do it. The most problematic thing he said occurs in the last 20 minutes of the 3rd hour and then the first 10 minutes of the 4th hour. So in that period, if someone goes right to that and just listens, Tom goes off on an interesting tangent. And in the space of that 20 minutes, he basically is saying that the ETs, we don't call them ETs, we don't call them aliens, we call them the others. And the others were basically the small g gods of our history, that they have been factionalizing humankind for all these thousands of years, and then getting them to fight each other over religious differences, literally creating religious wars.
Yeah.
And he repeats that and implies that it's even occurring up until the modern time. This is very problematic to me on many levels. the first thing he implies, he sort of implies. I mean, you can't dispel the possibility that this is something that's been presented to him by the contacts he's had in the Pentagon and the CIA, the advisor group and what have you.
Exactly.
But it's not absolutely clear. Tom has made it clear that he read all of Sitchin's books, he read all the ancient stuff, he's been there, gone through that, he's read all these people. And it's possible that he has formulated that view, right? And as you said, the insiders in the military intelligence complex have not dissuaded him from that view. And so maybe because they didn't, he's going, well, that's like saying it's true. And that's what he believes. On the other hand, it could be what he's being told.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. If in fact the military intelligence advisors that have been working with him, and it's more than 10, have actually told him that that is in fact what the ETs have been. God's manipulating humankind to create us to fight endless wars, right? Mostly over religion and factionalizing us. That is a huge deal. However, it's worth noting that aside from that interview, he's really kind of gotten away from that. He didn't really get into that with the Rogan interview, which didn't go well. It was probably something he shouldn't have done. But he really hasn't gone there since. And none of the other guys have gone there, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm very suspect there. And I'm watching that very closely, I assure you, because if that meme starts to come out of the mouth of Luis Elizondo or Hal Puthoff, and we start hearing the same things, then I am going to be one, and I'm going to have to do it, but I'm going to say, look, y'all out there with your 500 million computers and everything you know, I want you to pay attention to that. I want you to go after that. I want you to dig deep and do everything you can to see if you can confirm what the hell they just said.
That would be mind-blowing.
Knows it's not to be true. We want to hear from you, because that is dangerous stuff.
Agreed.
All right? Really dangerous stuff. We cannot afford to be played in this. And at this point, I'm not too concerned. But what Tom has said in that area, now again, I'm not someone that believes all ETs are good. What I believe is that they have an incredibly complex agenda, and that when we will learn that agenda, which I think one day we will, we're going to find some of it really cool. Some of it is and some of it's a little troubling. All right. And there's going to be some things that disturb us. How could it be otherwise? But the idea of ultimate evil ETs that are literally manipulating us and that's not just sort of disturbing. That's damn right evil. Very suspect there. So I'm going to be watching very closely, and we'll see how that goes.
I'm curious. You mentioned your interaction with John Mack, and you mentioned your interaction with John Mack, the abduction thing. So I know there's some people who kick the tires. They're focusing more so on, I just want to deal with the technology, et cetera. You have other people who get more so into the abductions, more people who get into the exopolitics of it. Are you also into the abduction part? Like, have you had the opportunity to interact with some of the abductees or some of the people who said they were interacting or
scores of contactees?
I'm fascinated by this. So I come from this at a particular direction. I started this from a new agey standpoint when I was, I think, like 17 or 18. And I came across this thing where this woman was talking about spirit guides. I never forget it. And my thought was, if this is real, I should be able to prove this or disprove this. I should be able to nail this down. This should not be something that's, up in the air. I should be able to put my finger on this if what she's saying for this is real. And I've somewhere along the way, I've developed this habit of, I want to know it for myself. I want to prove it. I want to see it. I don't necessarily, even if it's just subjective, even if it's just me, I want to be able to prove it. This ended up with a lot of weird and bizarre experiences where I agree with what the woman was saying, that there was a woman who I ended up meeting who I consider to be a guide. Now, I call a guide. Somewhere along the way, particularly when I got to this issue with this woman would appear multiple times in my life, and I would end up in these kind of altered states when I would meet this person. Somewhere along the way, particularly when I hit my head on the UFO issue, I started thinking to myself, hey, I have no idea what that person is. Like when you're in these non-physical states or these altered states, there's no way to know what that is. Like you're stuck in this paradigm of, yes, I'm experiencing something. Yes, I'm seeing something. Yes, I'm communicating with something. But is this exactly what I think this particular thing is? The abductee thing fascinates me to no end. Some of the same sounds like OBEs, like out of body experiences. Some of it sounds like actual contact, meaning the person who is interacting with the beings themselves. I'm curious, in the people that you met, what would you feel for them? I would imagine, look, like anything else, I would imagine there are going to be some who are maybe at the far end of the spectrum, but I would imagine there would be some who are not necessarily looking for public attention, who are just telling their story. This is what happened to me in this kind of matter-of-fact way. Do you know if these experiences were mostly physical, or do you think these experiences were mostly non-physical? And I'm talking about the contactees, meaning the majority of the contactees that you're interacting with. What were the main type of experience?
First of all, I don't know from spirit guides, guardian angels, or any of that. That's all interesting, but that's not what my interest in. Contactees is the term. Contact is the term, of which some of it is abductive type behavior.
Wait. Just to interrupt, I wasn't saying it from that standpoint. I was just saying from the perspective of that's how I kind of ended up in that topic. Like it was like a segue to it. It was one of those things where at some point I was like, this is also something I want to be able to understand, and I want to be able to I want to know better. And so, yeah, I understand the contact these things. I wasn't necessarily making an association between the two. I guess I was asking.
Yeah. So that people get confused, right? I want to make it clear. That's not what I deal with. I deal with contact. There's absolutely no question that contact with ETs is taking place. It has various forms. To me, the most important is the physical contact.
Yeah.
Same room, corporeal. There you go. There seems to be some indication of what we call telepathic contact that some people would call psychic, but I don't think it's that. So if an ET wants to communicate with you, they can communicate with you without actually coming down and hanging out in your bedroom.
Yeah.
So there may be some of that going on. And in terms of how much, it's large. I'm working off a 2% number. Means, and let's just keep it to the United States. As you move outside the United States, it's hard, but in the U.S., 2% looks like a number that may be sound. Now, that's pretty significant people.
Yeah, that's a massive number of people.
I talked to scores of contactees. Almost without exception, they don't want fame. They don't want to be known, and they're incredibly believable. You give me a typical contact, trust that person, then I would a member of Congress. It's not even a close call. They're telling the truth. The number of contact accounts that have now been accumulating in the files of researchers worldwide is somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million.
Yeah.
Now that's not a couple of sleep paralysis events. That's 500,000 people. And for those that have looked at this, and they haven't been looked at properly because that's a multi-million-dollar project. There's no money for that. But those that have looked at a huge number of these contact reports, there is a consistency, a bell curve of consistency of evidence that simply blows away any of the stupid, nonsensical debunker explanations. Contact is taking place. And in a sense, it's at the center of all this. It's the number 2 exopolitical question. Number 1 is good aliens, bad aliens. Number 2 is what is it with the contact? What's going on there? And so what can I say? It's not necessary to push that, though I used to not even bring it up, but finally I realized I had to. I just could not ignore that reality. Yeah. Just the fact that ETs are flying around in a saucer is all we need for a massive paradigm change.
Yeah.
Right. Contact is like gravy on the potatoes. Right. But it will be the most difficult public relations problem for the government post-disclosure. And it is another one of the reasons that it has been very hard to get this out and the embargo since the end of the Cold War. Because telling the people, hey, ETs are here, they got incredible technology, we've got some of that technology, we got antigravitic propulsion, we got new energy, could see super cheap energy, electrons, 1 penny in the dollar. That's not that bad. Yeah, ETs are here, I knew that. Boy, I want that technology. And by the way, we also need to mention that ETs have been contacting human beings, and they've been kind of doing they're doing whatever. They've been dealing with humans and creating human hybrids, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it. that is tough. They don't want to have to say that. And I understand. But thanks to the efforts of a lot of people, researchers, thanks to Whitley Strieber's book Communion, which launched, I think, the modern era contactee, I guess, revelations, because it triggered memories in huge numbers of people, mostly women, across the country when the book came out with the face of the ET on it. And that was back when there were bookstores. And so they had piles of these books in every window of every bookstore. And people are going along, going to the shopping mall, going to get myself some GNC stuff, going to buy some presents from my brother-in-law. And then, what the hell is that? Right? Seeing that face, and they get in flashback. Boom, off it goes. Which is why Whitley Strieber, in his file right now, used to be his and Ann Strieber's file, which he's let passed. He has over 500,000 written accounts sent to him by email or letter from contactees. That's a big number. And do you think the government wants to deal with that? No, they don't. So, but you know what I feel like about this is, I don't give a damn. Quoting a famous billionaire by the name of Bigelow, you're a public servant. You serve us. We pay your salary. All right. And you're no mega genius. We got people in our world just as smart or smarter than you. All you military intelligence guys, yeah, I got some nice computers. We got nice computers. So this idea that, oh man, they can't handle learning that, we already know.
Yeah.
So it's now not really a matter of trying to be kind to us. It is pure arrogance. It is no more acceptable than a doctor who tells you you're just fine, Jamal, when he knows you have third stage cancer, but he doesn't want to upset you. You know what happens to that doctor? He gets sued for $5 million and loses his license now. But in the 1950s, it was considered, my physician just thinking of my best interest. Those days are over. And so the sooner we know about the contact, formally acknowledged, the sooner we're going to be able to deal with it, address it, and get comfortable with it, and maybe even solve the problem. Don't know. But this whole business about we're children and they are our parents, those military intelligence guys and the fine people in the Congress and maybe even the White House who are our parents, and we are the children to be told only what we need to know and to sit at the dining room, to sit at the card table in the living room come Thanksgiving. That's over. We're just as smart as they are, and they feel they're carrying this terrible burden of the eye walking around the Pentagon. And I know there's contact going on, and I just feel it's tough on me, but I know that I can handle it. But those other poor people out there in Washington can't handle it. My attitude is, let that burden go. Put that burden on the shoulder of all 6 billion of us, okay? We'll help you there.
The problem with this, though, is if, it's like when I was younger, you go through that age where you get like 16, 17, and you start acting out, you start asserting, your adulthood.
Sure.
I watched Elizondo give his testimony, essentially saying, she asked them point blank, I think it was on CNN, do you believe we're being visited? And Elizondo said, I can't speak for the U.S. government, but yes, the answer is yes. I think the answer is yes. Now, I watched this thinking to myself, like,
U.S. government, right?
Right. Well, he said, right, Elizondo, the one who worked for the government, he said, I can't speak for the U.S. government, but based on my scientific research and based on the observations and analysis, et cetera, he says yes. I watched that thinking to myself, oh my God, this guy who just worked for the government just came out and confirmed that, yes, something is visiting us.
He's not the only one.
No, he's not the only one. But I guess my point is, I looked at that thinking to myself, other people had to see this. Like, you would have thought that people would have exploded hearing that bit of information, because I think it's one of the biggest stories that you could have on the, on the planet. And it was just kind of, they went to like a Burger King commercial afterwards. Like,
You know how many people watch CNN, Jamal? On a typical show? About 900,000. Might get 1 million if they're lucky. It's not that many people. But you're right. And as I pointed out, Chris Mellon basically said the same thing. But the key phrase is, I can't speak for the government. Yes, he can speak for the government, but he is not going to speak for the government, right? Because this program is designed to stay within certain lines. Right? They're not going to cross the line. They're going to honor certain rules. And the principal reason for that is probably the fact that there are still groups within the Pentagon and the CIA that are not happy about this.
Yeah.
They're not down on this particular program. They don't think they need public relations, right? They're happy to keep this truth and all their underground facilities secret until the last dog dies.
I guess my feeling is, if these guys, I mean, they're going to treat us like kids if we act like kids. Like, that's my thought. I mean, it's like, you come out and say they're aliens or there's something visiting us, and the public just kind of shrugs their shoulders and move on. And it's like,
that's what they do.
Yeah, it's like, how are you shrugging your shoulders on this? This is a big deal. It's a big deal.
They're going to say, look, we already know that, but what do you got? What can you tell me? Let's hear, and then as the information comes, they're going to get very excited. They're going to be glued to their TV sets for weeks. Yeah, but again, are they going to go, no, they're not, right? But I can't speak for the government. Now I understand it. And whatever time schedule they have, and I think they have kind of a time frame. We don't want to rush it, but we want to move things along a little bit, okay? I appreciate their time frame, but you want to know, there's a rule about war, right? All the battle plans that you make go out the window the moment the first bullet flies. And so whatever time frame they have, we have our time frame, and the cosmos has its time frame. And so their ability to stay within those lines is going to become more and more difficult. And at some point, it's going to kind of break. Now, I don't know how that will happen, but I totally applaud what they're doing, and I expect more. I'm not surprised that they've created a company and they're raising money. More power to them.
Yeah.
Okay. With money, you do more stuff and have more latitude. They seem to be doing it in a very transparent way. No problem with that. We need more money. I mean, I'm a big fan of MUFON. I'm trying to encourage MUFON to get bigger and stronger, get more people in, because I want it to be a player in the post-disclosure world, which is why I'm doing this interview that will probably be up on the MUFON TV archives, MUFON.tv. We need to get money. People need to start putting resources into those that have, and those organizations that have been dealing with this for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, so that we can be factors in the post-disclosure world.
Yeah.
And not have to yield up to all of the big shots. They're going to suddenly turn up and go, oh, yeah, like Seth Shostak would be the first guy to raise his hand and say, oh, I always knew they were here. Yeah. I know it, you understand. But we couldn't really talk about it, so we're looking at the signals. And I got paid pretty well and said he's kind of cool. But, I'm your man now. I'm the ET guy. Talk to me. I can talk ETs all day long. And I'm going, yeah, Seth, thank you so much. Would you just kind of step aside? That's important. People haven't quite got there. But to be fair, and I can tell you this, because this is not going to go in the air for a little bit, okay, is that the movie Sirius got $500,000 in crowdfunding and was made. Unacknowledged got $700,000 in crowdfunding and it was made. And To the Stars Academy has already raised $2.5 million. Well, tonight on Coast to Coast, which is March 1st, I'm going to be announcing that PRG has just entered into a joint venture with Never Ending Light Productions to produce a documentary called Disclosure.
Nice.
Political doc covering the Rockefeller Initiative, March 1993, to the election of 2016. We've got about 40 or 50 people we could potentially interview, and our goal is to put this on widescreen distribution like Fahrenheit 9/11 to the level of 2,000 screens. This is a big deal. It gets announced tonight, and we're hoping the public will respond. This will be the first truly political documentary about this issue. Right. And if it makes it to the big screens, it'll be the first documentary in the ET issue ever get widescreen distribution. So we've set some strong goals for ourselves. We need, the American people cannot fund this issue fast enough right now. And why do I say that? Because if they fund it, if they sign up to the Stars Academy, get a few shares of stock, and they help fund it and get part of this, if they fund this researcher and that organization that are involved in this issue, then they're going to have a much better chance of having a say in the post-disclosure world. It's going to basically be remade. If they don't, Monsanto will give you the post-disclosure world, and GE will do it, and some high-tech billionaires will do it, and some new government agencies, the Department of Extraterrestrial Defense, or whatever the hell, that will shape the post-disclosure world, which could very well ending up like the pre-disclosure world, only with ETs. And that we cannot allow to happen. And so
Terrifying.
my message to the American people is, boy, this is getting close. And if you think you want to, if you want the new world to be the one that you help shape, you need to start putting some money behind the people that are representing you on this issue now.
Do you think Clinton was going to release the files? Like, I had this pet theory, I had this pet hypothesis that Clinton was going to get in office. She seemed to be very interested in the UFO thing. Podesta seemed to be extremely interested in it.
Yeah.
There seemed to be people who were pushing this on, and she was overt, even wanting to be asked the question. At least in the, I think it was in the WikiLeaks docs, was showing that she wanted to be asked the question by talk show hosts and stuff like that to get into the public.
But you know why that happened? A lot of people don't know this. That's going to be coming out. Why did Clinton go on Kimmel? Why did her husband go on Kimmel? Why did Obama go on Kimmel? Why did she talk to the Conway Daily Sun? And why did Podesta give 5 interviews on it? Why were there 400 articles written about her connection to the ET issue? Because I arrived in Washington on the 14th and PRG drove that entire story from
No way. Are you serious? That's amazing.
I literally created that political coverage, right, and pushed it from November of 2014 on.
Yeah.
My public relations person was working the media. We got the initial articles in the Washington Times, and then it moved on from there. At one point, I was working with 42 reporters on a source basis, giving them real-time information, right? And it was those reporters that started pressing Clinton and Podesta for, can you comment on this? Which they couldn't do. They did not want to talk about any of this during that campaign, ever. No, they wanted to get to the White House where she was going to be the disclosure president, but they didn't want to talk about it during the campaign. They thought it would cost them the election, but they had no choice because PRG, and they knew it, it finally caught up with them. And the issue of the Rockefeller Initiative had caught up with them. Now, this story is not known because this is all happening in Washington. Right now, admittedly, of those 400 articles, 120 of them referred to me and PRG. Believe it or not, literally, basically saying this is the person that's doing this. Yeah. I never got a single call from a single television network show. I'm going to talk about a major story affecting the leading candidate to be president because of the truth embargo. So if someone were to go read those articles, they would get the picture. Now, I'm not doing this to toot my horn, to get accolades. I'm trying to do it to show that there is a process underway that is forcing this action. And let me assure you, she absolutely intended to be the disclosure president. She wasn't going to wait very long either. It would probably been within the first 3 to 4 months of her administration. And that would have been one of the greatest legacies in all of political history. And she had it right within her hands. Unfortunately, she ran a terrible campaign. And as I told Podesta, I emailed Podesta several times. I never get a response, doesn't matter. I said, look, if she comes forward on the ET issue forthrightly, if she literally starts talking Rockefeller Initiative and her husband joins her, if they literally start providing the truth to American people, what they already know, she would have won hands down because her number one limitation was her inauthenticity and proneness to mendacity. And that would have been a major truth that she would have been bringing to the American people. She would have won hands down. What was Donald Trump going to say about that? He knows nothing about this issue, right? And if he had tried to make a tinfoil hat thing out of it, it would have blown up into space because half the American people already know the ET presence is real. But they couldn't do it because they were more concerned about losing than winning. And they didn't want to take the risk. And when you're not willing to take the risk about the truth, I question whether you should be in public service.
Do you think that there's any chance at all in the sense of Trump doing something with this? I mean, I have somebody asked Sarah Sanders, his press secretary, about this.
Sure.
Am I breaking up? Sounds like I'm breaking up. Oh, there we are. Yeah, someone asked Sarah Sanders about this, and I think her name is Sanders. His
Sarah
communications person, but I don't remember her answer on this. And if I'm not
mistaken, she blew off the answer. She had nothing. Look, the chance of Trump doing anything is extremely small, but it's not zero. But he's not going to be around much longer. He cannot make it through this year, so it's a moot point. And I think it's one of the reasons why they restarted. They didn't have to restart after the Trump election. It blew the whole everything that Delonge was trying to do got blown up with Trump election, right? In a sense, one of the reasons that they engaged him, one of the reasons that they went to the effort to buy into his idea about getting information out and showing the Pentagon and the CIA to be the good guys and being part of the solution was because they knew. They're reading all these hundreds of articles that are in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Clinton. They're seeing Clinton talk about it. They knew that she had a history. They know about the Rockefeller Initiative, even though the press never covered it. And they're seeing, my God, she's going to disclose if she becomes president. And that's about, what, a year and a half away? 2 years?
Oh, you think they were trying to get ahead of it? Like they were essentially saying,
let's give her some driving. Absolutely. If she wasn't running for president, I don't think they'd have made the move. They used Tom DeLonge. So when she loses, boom, all blows up. Now, Tom DeLonge stepped back, and you didn't hear anything for a while. It was like they were trying to regroup it. A number of people involved stepped away from it, right? Because they couldn't afford to be attached in that situation because they didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. They had to reformulate the team. Elizondo had to, get to the point where he could retire. They had another guy, I think it was Khan, retired. And they got a team together that was fully outside government, but heavily connected. And they decided to go forward in October. And they didn't have to. They could have waited. They could have waited until after the midterm elections because, again, political chaos is reigning right now. And it's probably not the ideal time to make that move. Why did they make the move in October? 2 reasons. One, in my view, is one, the horses were out of the barn, right? And they weren't going to get back in the barn, and so that was a problem. They had people were already named. There was known prior to October 11th, and they couldn't get them back in, so that was going to be a problem. And two, they ran the numbers. They got some pretty big computers at the Pentagon, capable of running huge gaming schemes that can predict what the crop yield's going to be in 2029 or whatever. What I'm talking about. I think they ran the numbers and they calculated that Trump will not make it through the year. And so they go, okay, we'll get this started, but it won't be in this kind of chaos. It will be in a post-Trump reality, which will be more stable. That's my best calculation on this. We'll see. But again, that just gives you an idea how complicated this thing is. I mean, we're talking about 4-dimensional chess.
No, I agree with you, man. It's extremely chaotic. Like it's this thing of in best case scenario, like going back in the 40s or the 50s, where you had this kind of the world who's looking out to space and the space race and all this other stuff, and now you have it where politics. I think Congress has like a 10% approval rating. I think the president has like a 30%. Yeah, it's some insane level. The media is distrusted. So you have all of these institutions that are distrusted, and to that you're gonna, it's like you're bringing in this external thing from across our shores.
But it's coming in on the shoulders of truth. This is the biggest truth of all time. If you've been lying to people for 60 years and you want to get their trust back, you don't tell them a couple of small little truths, right? You tell them a big one, okay? And that can kind of change things around. Look, if you look at the analogy I like to use is an automobile. I had a Mazda RX-7 once, and it got damaged a little bit, and I didn't realize that it damaged the crankcase, and so the oil drained out. And I'm cruising down the freeway near Denver, and the thing just stops running. Right? The engine froze up. Okay, very awkward. Trust, particularly in a Democratic Republican state, is the lubricant that makes things go. Yeah. And when you drain the trust out, the government seizes up. And that's exactly what has happened in this country. Our engines, it's a big country, it's got a big car, it's got a lot of engines. The engines are seizing up here, there. They're not going anywhere. And when an engine seizes up, it's basically a block of metal. You throw it away, you have to get a new one. So as the trust continues to drain, our country is seizing up. We can't get anything done. We can't pay bills. We can't fix bridges. We can't deal with any of the major issues, right? Our politics is therefore decaying. People don't vote. Money buys the votes. It's a disaster. And the rest of the world is just moving on. They're just moving on. And we're sitting here frozen up like a car on the side of the road with an engine seized because the lubricant's gone. China is moving so far ahead, we may never catch them in certain areas. AI, robotics, they want to go to the moon, whatever, Mars. This can't go on.
Yeah.
And so if we don't get some lubricant back in the engine here, we're in deep trouble. And if you've got 26 engines that are seized up and you're not going anywhere, that's a lot of lubricant. And let me tell you, the truth about the ET presence, disclosure, is one big giant barrel of lubricant, enough to fill most of those in, or fill up some engines and get them running again real fast.
My fear on this is people have looked at school shootings and have called those things fakes. They've looked at the moon landing. They call the moon landing fake. My concern in this is once you've lost that trust, like you said, the lubricant of the system itself.
Anything goes.
True, right? It's like they'd say here's some information showing that there's an ET presence on Earth, or at the very least that these guys have been interacting with something that they don't necessarily know what it is. So they say they know what it is. And then the public looks at this. You're going to have some who says, okay, the evidence seems like it leans more towards what they're saying is absolutely true. And then you have others who are saying they're only releasing this because they want to have a false flag attack. This is my concern with this in the sense of the truth thing. It's like this thing of people are overtly cynical on this. And I understand why they're overtly cynical, but it leads to some worrying places that they could go when this idea of trust and this idea of truth kind of just falls by the wayside to such a degree. That's my only concern.
Yeah, well, you should be. This is the situation now is doubly precarious because by the time the internet starts to get going in the 1990s, we'd already been through 48 years of this truth embargo. Right? Distrust was growing. And so then it continued to accelerate. And so you've got the distrust is growing, right? And the internet is growing. And so now you got two things that really you don't want to put together like that, all right? So as people lose trust in government, they now have, on the other hand, a machine, a theory generating machine, right? Where you can generate theories in quantities undreamed of, all right? And so if A happens and you don't believe it, and 300 million people have a computer and access to the internet in no time at all, 100 million counter theories immediately come up. Look at it this way. In the age of the internet, if for some reason people lost faith in Einstein's relativity theory, right, or any number of other theories, which we don't, we have untold thousands of new theories would be emerging from sites and blogs all over the place saying, here's what really is going on in three-dimensional space. Thank God that hasn't happened. But in the area of politics and events, distrust is rampant. And as a result, you can't move forward. You can't resolve anything, right? So, and the internet is not going to change easily there. That is going to be a really tough one to solve. The distrust now level is so high, and the amount of what we'll call completely theoretical stuff being tossed on the net by people is so vast. It is going to take a long time. And all I can say to people out there that actually want to accomplish anything or not waste the rest of their life chasing their tail is they need to apply every ounce of education they ever got, right? And make an effort to discipline themselves so they can start figuring out what is the BS here and what's a reliable source and what isn't, and start putting a filter on the net. If they don't, they're going to have a head full of garbage.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not a good head to have. It's not a good look for a thinking person. And it's not a matter of placing blame. It's just what it is. We didn't ask for the internet. It was just handed to us, right? I know people weren't running around going, oh, give me Facebook. They didn't even know what the hell it was. And now they got millions of cat videos and the ability to go on and say anything about anything. And on the internet, when Michio Kaku puts out a tweet, for a lot of people, it's no different than some 13-year-old kid, right? High on video games, putting out a tweet. It's all the same. It's essentially, what they call false equivalencies. Everybody seems to have the equal platform. It's not true, right? And so we're going to suffer from this for a while. I don't have any easy answers, but I know this. the government's got to get trust back, and our institutions have got to get trust back. You got to be able to believe the newspaper articles. You need to believe the government when it says this is true or that's true. You need to believe academia, right? And the only way that's going to happen is if these institutions start serving up the truth.
Yeah.
And since academia completely capitulated to the truth embargo, utter capitulation, meaning the entire academic community in America, all the millions of professors that have passed through it in the last 70 years, all 5,000 colleges and universities basically went,
yeah, they close their eyes into this.
On the truth embargo, right? Meaning, we're not going to bother you. Don't worry. We've got all those brilliant minds and stuff, but we're not going to step over that line. And the media, of course, signed on. Well, guess what? The truth embargo ended up being a giant distrust machine, a massive machine churning out distrust every single second of every single minute of every single hour for 70 solid years. And we wonder why people are just not, buying their BS anymore. Right?
I think that's so. I think it's got two parts. I think you're right. I think it's I think it is the BS generator. That's true, the internet. But I don't think the issue is the internet on this. I think the issue is everything else. Like, so you have political leaders who lie flamboyantly, like just outright lie. You can look at the videotape of them saying one thing, and then you can see them doing something else. You can show both videotapes one after the next. You have media who comes up with stories completely lacking context in the way that they give those stories. Now, if you're putting somebody on the internet, even if you had the internet, if you had trust in some kind of institution, at the very least, even if you had all these other stories on the internet, it's not like fake news. It's just now coming up. They've always been fake news. What was the guy? They called the guy a hermaphrodite. It was like back to like Andrew Johnson or something like that was running against somebody, and or Adams called the guy a hermaphrodite or something like that, and put these out in articles. I mean, all sorts of just weird stuff. I guess my feeling is, or what I'm saying is, it's the failure of the institutions themselves that has allowed the propagation of fake news, whether that's internet or anything else. Like you said, 100,000 theories overnight. But those theories, the only reason those theories are believed is because of loss of legitimacy for those other institutions.
Well, yeah, again, that's what I was saying. I was saying that even before the internet turns up, or before the internet becomes megalithic, the government had already eroded enormous trust. Remember, they lied to their teeth about the Vietnam War. They lied about the Iraq War. They lied about just about every war we've ever had. People die. Lots of people die. And so the trust is eroding. The internet comes along, and now everybody can lie.
Yeah. That was anybody.
Because, here's how it works. Here's how it works. It's really a simple equation. And again, without the internet, it's a problem, but it's not a serious problem.
Yeah. Somebody
walks into a school, shoots it up, kills 10, 20 people. Okay? Terrible thing. News runs it. I've got a blog. Well, I could write on my blog, somebody came into a school and shot 20 people, 20 kids, and they were caught, and and this is what's going on. Who cares? It's already out there. It's already in the news. They don't need to read it on your stupid blog. You've just basically said what we already know. So how are you going to get somebody to read your blog? Well, you always go 180 degrees. Somebody walked into school, was claiming they killed 20 kids. Didn't happen. They're all alive. It was actually crisis actors. It was a false flag event being put on by the Illuminati. Hang on a second.
He'll be back in his phone. Yeah.
Somebody's going to read that and go, "Oh wow,
yeah,
I got to share that."
That sounds right. Yeah,
I like that. Okay, and you get 150,000 views, right? You don't get, and by the way, the internet also created a situation where views meant money, hits meant money. Not a good thing. Okay, and so now the more sensational thing I put up there, the more views I get, the more money I make. So the whole thing turned into a giant bullshit factory is what it's become. Now, it is, fortunately, thank God, has a certain immunological self-correcting component, meaning the same power that allows some utterly ridiculous thing to get going also gives power to debunk that ridiculous thing. And so you have some of that going. But right now, the immunological system of the internet is being overwhelmed by the BS viruses. And so it's damaging its ability. It's creating havoc. But hey,
Yeah.
it's 25 years into one of the most profound invention in human history. Did we expect that it was going to go smoothly? No.
Yeah,
So the question is, how much damage is going to be done before we finally get through this really kind of weird period where nothing seems true, everything's upside down, nothing makes sense, nothing is normal. And frankly, it would be kind of fun, like reading Alice in Wonderland, if it wasn't for those 25,000 nukes that are still available to launch.
Oh man. Oh yeah. Yeah. We're getting
By
closer.
the way, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists just moved the clock a couple of weeks ago, 2 minutes to midnight, closest it's ever been in 70 years.
I keep. There have been some networks, some lefty networks, who've kind of made this thing that, I've made this point that we're moving closer and closer to the brink. And, some people have said that, I'm being somewhat hyperbolic on this. I don't think so. I mean, we've been moving forces like closer to Russia's border. We've been moving forces like NATO forces near the border. We've put a ship out to the Black Sea. We've been killing people in Syria. I mean, we've been ingratiating ourselves in other nations, particularly in response to Syria, where we're literally head to head with Russian forces in this kind of proxy war that could at any point turn hot. I mean, Russia's already warned the United States saying, look, you're in this country illegally. If you attack their forces, we're going to attack you back. I think this is a big deal. I don't think this is minor at all. I think this is...
We're dancing on the edge of the volcano. I invite people, your listeners, your viewers, to go Google up or YouTube up the recent announcement by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists moving the clock to 2 minutes, and listen to the scientists. They actually give you the reasons. You can watch the video. It's on YouTube. And they give the reasons why they have moved it 2 minutes to midnight, closest ever. And people can get a sense of it. Because again, this is not something people want to dwell on. They don't think about it much. This happens, that happens. All I can say is, yeah, you don't have to pay attention. You don't have to know. It'll happen. And when it happens, it'll happen fast. You won't see it coming, right? And that's just what it'll be. And the cosmos won't care. The cosmos will just barely notice, right, that we just torched the whole damn place. So somebody needs to, focus on it. Someone needs to bring it up. I have done that a lot because essentially I've always been at the core an anti-war activist. That's what I am. But I don't say that. I don't position myself like that because there's already lots of anti-war activists. There's not too many exopolitical activists on the truth embargo. But avoiding this, ultimate deal, which we're still so close to, is still, it's not over. It's not over. And those people that think the ETs are going to save this, the messianic crowd, they'll stop the missiles. It's like, they'll stop it. It's okay. I don't think so. You want to? If I was the ETs, and I've been watching this all these years, we're doing our thing, and we've got some programs going, and we're interacting. We're also seem to be advancing the disclosure process, which could lead to open contact. And then some idiot launches some nukes, and the next thing you know, they're flying all over the place. I'm up there going, okay, guys, we live long, right? We live a couple thousand years, because we got great, biology and great genetics. We'll be back in 1,000 years and see how you're doing. And if you're recovered, we'll run through this again. And maybe you could become part of our galactic alliance, which, by the way, is 500,000 years old, okay? Right? But if you're that stupid, fine. We've given you every chance to sort of acknowledge our presence. We've given you every chance to respond to this. But you just keep the secrets and build the weapons.
Yeah.
I don't see them as gods or messiahs. I see them as entities that are on the verge of engaging us in a formal way, but nothing would convince them more of our not being ready for a kind of alliance with them than launching 500 or 600 nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it's like those apes. Those apes, they had all the technology and they used it in themselves. Let me ask you this. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you may want to tell the audience before we close? I always ask that question because sometimes the person may have something on the tip of their tongue or something they want to get across. Just
let me tell you, let me just give them some PRG stuff. Look, the new website is up now, paradigmresearchgroup.org. It's pretty cool, and it's going to have a lot more added to it. It's already got a lot up. I'm scheduled for 8 more conferences this year. I've already done 2. That's the Tom DeLonge effect.
Yeah.
Everybody's excited, but they can't get Tom, so they call me. Can you come? Yeah, okay, I can come. I'll be doing the UFO Con on March 23. That's just in a couple of weeks up in South San Francisco. I'll be doing the Contact in the Desert June 1 to 4. That event up in Indian Wells, the new resort, could have 3,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Right? It's a big conference. Contact in the Desert, recommend it highly. I'll be at the Edinburgh UFO Festival. I'll be speaking at the World Ufology Conference in Barcelona. There's a conference, there's an Exopolitical Conference that's just been set in Vancouver, Canada for June the 30th.
Oh, wow.
And so I'll be up in Vancouver. And again, all of these are on my website. All these conferences are listed on my website. You have links to them. You can see
I
that.
put them at the bottom. Yeah, I put them at the bottom.
So there's that. As I said, and it will already have been announced by the time your viewers see this, by a couple of days, that PRG is going to do a documentary with Never Ending Light Productions.
That's amazing. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Disclosure. And it's going to be about exopolitics. It's going to be about Clinton. It's going to be at the Rockefeller Initiative. It's going to be about the last campaign. It's going to be about, and it's going to have an epilogue that will undoubtedly deal with Tom DeLonge. So we're hoping to get this into major theaters. We hope to have it done this year. And the crowdfunding is now underway. And the site is using one of the new domains. It's disclosure.film. Disclosure.film. None of this disclosuremovie.com crap. It's disclosure.film, which is a specialty domain that costs $139 a year. So please go to the domain so we can pay for the damn thing, right? Disclosure.film. That's it, Jamal. I think that's a lot, and I really appreciate all this time.
I appreciate you coming on. I absolutely appreciate you coming on. I was so looking forward to this. Like I said, when I came across this kind of information, I started in a particular way, and I kind of worked my way through. And you start with, it's like this guy saying somebody's eating their babies, this other person, and you eventually get it working your way through where you get past fear and you get to people who just, this is my research, this is what I've seen, and you look at it and be like, that guy makes sense to me. He sounds like what he's saying sounds accurate. Doesn't sound like he's just making this up. You were one of those people for me, and so I absolutely appreciate you coming onto the show.
I'm flattered. And what you just said is you're applying your filter.
Oh yeah, you have to. I mean, you'd be
applying a filter.
if you did.
Better than one's filter, better than net will be kind to you.
Yeah.
Right. And if you've got a good filter, I feel you're going to be just fine.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, guys, I am going to end this. I'm going to end this, guys. I want to thank you for showing, or thank you guys for coming out. If you guys enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you guys can always support the Patreon. Thanks, everyone.
Sure.